All right. Good morning, Talk Tuesday team. It's so nice to see so many faces here this Tuesday morning. My name is Caroline Calhoun. I am joining you all from Litchfield, Connecticut from Ed.D, which is the Northwest Corner Regional Education Service Center here in Connecticut. And I am delighted to be joined by my Ed.D team this morning, Diane, Jaren, and also from our CSDE partners, Kari Sullivan-Custer from the Office of Student Supports, our Connecticut expert on all things attendance. And we are delighted today to have an expert joining us from Attendance Works, Emma Herdean, who is joining us from the Midwest this morning. So we're so excited to share some updates with you all and to then dive into Emma's content. We'll have opportunities for folks to share thinking in the chat, and we'll have a video for reflection and a whole bunch of great content. This morning is designed as a back to basics mini series. So the next session will actually be next week, not 2 weeks from now. And we will have those two sessions to really start the year off right as we dive into all things attendance and engagement here in Connecticut as the school year commences. So I am going to go ahead and ask Jaren if you would kindly move to the next slide. We just went through who's here, and let's go to the next slide, please. So as usual, we want to really bring to your attention at the start of each Talk Tuesday some highlights and happenings around the state. As a reminder, that Superintendent's Digest is posted for everybody, and the link is there for you. We are switching things up a little bit this year, so you actually have access to this slide deck in real time. So we'll be popping that in the chat so folks can access it. We will, as usual, also be pushing that out via email after the session. So that Superintendent's Digest link is there for you. Very big news as of this morning, those final annual attendance results are now available in EdSite Public as well as EdSite Secure. So if you haven't already, please take time to check those out and see how you wrapped up the year. These were all the district certified results that were sent into CSDE. The next big news is that those Smarter Balanced Assessment results and the NGSS science results are also available in EdSite Secure. And lastly, in less exciting news, some scammers are trying to take advantage and target families and students with these back to school scams. So Governor Lamont and the consumer protection officials in the state sent out a press release very recently, I think it was yesterday or today, with information about how to avoid that. So we just wanted to call your attention to make sure that's on your radar and that it is indeed a scam. Next slide, please, Jaren. The last thing I wanted to share with you before I pass it over to Kari is I'm not sure how many of you on here receive the Marshall memo, but if you don't, I recommend signing up for it. It's really just a great curation of all things happening in K-12 education around the country. And so one of the articles that was curated in this week's edition was an article by Sharon Porter, who's a principal out of Maryland. It was in the National Association of Elementary School Principals publication called The Communicator, and it came out in early July, but it's a really interesting article all about leadership and all about those different arenas in which we have control versus influence versus impact, and kind of digging into that thought process of what we really can control as educators and as leaders. So as we kick off the school year and think about the influence that you have or not in different aspects of your work, we just thought it would be an interesting article for you all to take a peek at. So that is in there for you as well. Next slide, please, Jaren. And lastly, we have a whole host of Connecticut resources. These are on the state website as always, but we wanted to pop them in here for ease of reference as well. And Kari will, I think, talk you through a few of those to highlight them for you and then give you an update from the state lens. So I will pass it to you, Kari.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you had a very restful summer and are feeling energized for the new school year. For me, this is a special moment. We're beginning our 5th year of Talk Tuesday. Woohoo! What started as a simple experiment in connection has grown into a trusted space where we learn together, share openly, and support one another in improving student attendance and engagement. But before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work you all put in last year. When we saw chronic absence peak in February, everybody remembers that. We saw it go higher than it's been. I don't think it was over 20%. Um, Districts responded with creativity and determination, and we heard many of those ideas here on Talk Tuesday from our districts about what they were doing to engage students and bring them back to school. So through some strong mid-year recovery efforts, student engagement, and all those innovative strategies, we ended the year stronger than we were in February. As Caroline mentioned, the data came out yesterday, so I've been busy digging in, rolling up my sleeves, looking at bright spots, finding out where we need to focus. But I want to just recognize the effort matters. It shows that what we can do together makes a difference. So as we launch this new school year, let's carry that spirit forward. Talk Tuesday will continue to be our place to celebrate successes, troubleshoot our challenges, and inspire each other with new ideas. Together, we can accelerate improvement and ensure more students are present, engaged, and thriving. And so I have a few slides to start off today. The first one here is, if you go back to Caroline's slide, I wanted to just say a couple words about last year and how excited we are for this year. But these links here, they are links, I believe, are on our chronic absence webpage. So I put the QR code here, and you'll find most of what you're looking for: the definition of student attendance, the EdSite data portal, the Learner Engagement Attendance Program. The PSIS reference guide has two really good resources in it around disengaged youth and around special circumstances around attendance and what you should do for students who may be getting homebound instruction or students who may be traveling. You'll find some guidance there. So you can find these. Our School is Better With You campaign is there, and some other documents. Our prevention intervention guide, which we'll be updating this year, is also on our chronic absence webpage. So the QR code is here. If you do CT chronic absence, you're likely to come to that page. The next slide, please. And the next slide. So we have a comprehensive approach to attendance in Connecticut. It started with legislation 10 years ago in 2015, but before that, it started with state and local leaders coming together and becoming champions for school attendance. Legislation that was implemented in 2015 included the requirement for school attendance teams and district attendance teams, the requirement for a prevention and intervention guide. So we have our policy guidance. We have our guidance for excused and unexcused absences. We have data dashboards, many data dashboards on EdSite. We have an attendance dashboard, which includes our monthly attendance and our yearly attendance. Attendance is part of our accountability system, which are the reports that are issued annually on how schools are doing. Chronic absence is indicator 4 in our accountability system. Of course, we have professional development and support through Talk Tuesdays and technical assistance. We have our learner engagement attendance program, which was funded during COVID and received a state line item. Thank you very much to our legislature and our governor to begin with state funding in 2026. We also have a student advisory board with many members who are here today who help us stay fresh around what's happening and keep us in touch around how we can better support this. And of course, we have collaboration at the State Department of Education across all of my colleagues here, the Turnaround Office, the Academic Office, the Bureau of Special Ed is our partner here with Talk Tuesdays, and also with other state agencies. We've had the Department of Public Health come to Talk Tuesdays. We work closely with the Department of Children and Families. And so I just wanted to share sort of our comprehensive approach, because today's Talk Tuesday and next week's Talk Tuesday are what I call boot camp. This is for people who may not know anything about chronic absence or want a refresher about chronic absence, but we've seen a lot of change in positions over the summer. And so we like to have this sort of level setting opportunity for districts and school folks. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit difficult to see, but it is, it actually looks like 6-year trend. Chronic absence going back to before the pandemic when it was 10.4%. And so we, as you know, we saw chronic absence rise sharply during the pandemic to 23.7. And we've been coming down over the last couple of years, the decline. We're down to 17.2 for 24-25 school year. So the progress has slowed with our rate stabilizing around 18% for the past 2 years. But the data shows both gains from our recovery efforts and the continued challenge of reducing chronic absence further. This is not an easy task. This is something that we're going to continue to work on for probably many years to come. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to show you just a little bit about what's in our dashboards. And both the dashboards, there's a chronic absence, which has annual data, and an attendance dashboard that has monthly data. They have the school level and the district level data and students by groups. And for an example, I pulled out our chronic absence by grade level and compared the last 2 years. And you'll see that we had improvement in attendance across nearly every grade. There was one grade that saw a small uptick, and that was grade 5. So we'll be exploring that. Kindergarten shows encouraging early gains. They saw more than a 2-point drop, which was bigger than any other grade level. Elementary grades continue to have strong attendance. Middle school shows steady improvement. High school remains our biggest challenge, especially senior year. So the next step is to build on these early successes while tackling persistent high school absenteeism. And we have plans to work with you and to bring speakers and connect to, if you haven't read the State Board of Education's 5-year plan, there is information in there that it really supports attendance and making school engaging for all students, including high school students. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, and we'll be having more information over the next couple of Talk Tuesdays. I know for September 9th, I'm going to bring forward some of the latest research that's come out on Hopkins University and Attendance Works and others, the American Enterprise Institute, to share with you what they're finding at the national level around attendance. But I just wanted one thing to share with you, that we can forecast trends and plan interventions in advance. This is last year's chronic absence rates by month. So you can see it follows a predictable seasonal pattern, rising in the winter months and easing in the spring. In 2024-25, we saw our rates peak to 20.2%, but then they declined steadily through June. This mirrors patterns from prior years, and it's showing we can forecast our trends and plan interventions in advance. We know when chronic absence is going to rise. We know that winter weather, delayed days of school, half days, when illnesses spike, we're going to see. So we have to be prepared for those with our messaging and our interventions and strategies. Mid-year recovery efforts continue to be a key strategy for reversing winter peaks and ending the year stronger. So we'll be talking more about that as the year goes by. I think that's my last slide. If anyone has any questions, do we have time for questions? They could put them in the chat and I can respond to questions in the chat. How's that? I'm looking at Carol.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So welcome. We're excited. It's a new school year, new rounded Talk Tuesday. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Caroline.
Thank you so much, Kari. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, you had some, yes, a little bit more language to share.
And this one looks like state law because it is state law. And I did not want to let this opportunity go without reminding folks that the state law 10-198A requires district attendance teams for all districts with a chronic absence of 10% or higher, or if the district has one or more schools with a chronic absence rate of 15% or higher. Our prevention and intervention guide and the legislation describes what district attendance teams are. And we also have a law, the same law requires school attendance teams, or if there's 15% or higher chronic absence rate. I took a quick look at the data yesterday, and probably 2/3 of our districts are required to have a district attendance team. So if you work at the district level, you might want to be a part of that or find out more about that. If you're at school level, you should find out more about that. These are highly suggested that these are led by district or school level administrators. And we also have new legislation that requires reporting to the JJP, the Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee, on what our Alliance District teams are doing and who has teams and what they're doing. Annually, we'll be reporting that. So we'll be sending more information out to the Alliance districts regarding that. But just wanted to remind folks of that law so that if you're one of those districts that meet the threshold, you are having those meetings. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kari. Let's go to the next slide, Jaren. And I am very pleased to introduce to you all Emma Herdean. She is an Ed.D. She is a senior fellow with Attendance Works. And perhaps most strikingly, Emma is fully trilingual, which I think is amazing as a language major myself. So really amazing part of your expertise that you bring to the work. Emma consistently volunteers in children and youth programs and with immigrant communities. She has her bachelor's in English and a master's in linguistics from Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. And her Ed.D is in organizational leadership from Oakland University in Rochester, Minnesota. And Emma and her family live in the Metro Detroit area, where she tries to find balance, I'm sure, between all things family and work, and her knowledge and experience with all kinds of nonprofit organizations, family literacy programs, schools and community partnerships in the last 15 or so years has really been instrumental in her current work focused on attendance in schools across the country with attendance work. So we're delighted to have you here this morning, Emma, and we will pass it over to you.
Thanks so much, Caroline, and welcome everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to engage in conversation with you today and learn together. Next slide. All right, so today is part one of Back to the Basics. And while we acknowledge that you are the experts in the room, and many of you might be familiar with the key concepts of attendance and chronic absence, again, just like Kari said today, we're laying the foundations and looking at the measures so we have the same language, the same understanding, and we speak in similar ways with our staff. Next slide. All right. Our goal for the remaining of the hour is to understand what chronic absence is and why it matters, to be introduced to the framework of the multi-tiered approach and some of the strategies that we use with that lens of prevention and early intervention. And then we're going to learn about effective strategies that support increased attendance and engagement. So let's go to a quick poll. We'll do this in the chat. And so I'll give you about 1 minute to read A, B, C, D, and E. And the question here is, which of these following statements highlight the impact of attending school regularly in your community? So in the chat, if you would, please put whichever you think would apply, A, B, C, D, or E. So while you do that, we're looking at pre-K and first graders who attend regularly with the expectation to perform better. Students who attend regularly are more proficient by the third grade. They do better when they're on standardized tests, graduation from high school and persistence through college. And then the last one, is truly good attendance helps students stay engaged, build social emotional skills, and develop strong thinking and planning abilities. So looking at the chat, and I see A, B, C, D, E. I see all of the above, all. Most of them are all, and I believe you're right. So yes, thank you so much for your response. Yes, C through E all apply, and I would say yes, all of them apply. And they truly do, because as we think about just most recent studies, it shows that the impact of chronic absence goes far beyond academics. It affects the whole child, including students' educational engagement, their social engagement, and definitely their executive function. So all of them apply. Thank you for participating. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So we know that attendance matters, right? And improving attendance is really part of our priority, your priority in the state of Connecticut. Students need to attend and engage in learning in order to benefit. So while showing up does not guarantee learning, a student who misses class cannot benefit. In a large number of students, if many students miss a class, it's an indication that these challenges require systemic solutions. So research tells us, and if you can click through the slide, research tells us that chronic absence in kindergarten and first grade can lead to inability to read on third grade. And that inability to read at grade level in third grade can lead to lower academic achievement in middle school, which also is connected to students who do not read at grade level and don't have that capacity to sustain academic achievement will most likely drop out of high school. And so we want to be able to prevent that. And our work, again, is really focused on increasing attendance. So let's see how we define chronic absence. Let's go to the next slide. All right, chronic absence happens when a student misses 10% or more of their day or their instruction for any reason, right? Any reason includes the excused, unexcused, and suspensions. And thinking about chronic absence as a measure, think about the fact that it's designed to serve as an early warning metric for when students are at risk academically due to poor attendance. And if we were to think about in a school year that's 180 days, 10% of that is 18 days, which makes it 2 days a month, or 4 days in the second month, 6 days in the following, especially as we think about the start of the school year. Keeping those days in mind is really important. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So what is the difference between average daily attendance, truancy, and chronic absence? Average daily attendance is a school level measure that tells us how many students show up each day. It helps us notice when dips occur, and it also masks individual student absences. So again, think about it as a school level measure. Truancy only counts unexcused absences, and it emphasizes that compliance, and it uses more of a blaming or punitive solution than positive and preventive. Chronic absence includes all of these absences, right? It emphasizes the impact of missed days and the benefits of being present. It uses the preventative, problem solving, and trauma informed strategies. And really, it cultivates the student and family engagement so that families and students are not problems to be solved, but they are really active in designing the solutions. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's look a little bit of where we are in terms of national data, and then we'll look at the local data, just like Kari shared. So national data tells us that chronic absence doubled from 1 in 6 students pre-pandemic to it actually doubled from 1 in 3 to 1 to 6 in 2021-22, right? And it slightly decreased, and we see a slight decrease consistently. And right now, across all of our states, chronic absence is affecting 1 in 4 children. And it remains strongly associated with worse outcomes for achievement, graduation, and those executive functions. So, next slide. When a student misses school, the impact of that missed instruction has this ripple effect, right? It affects individual students, and it can also affect other students in the classrooms. It affects the teachers who have to reteach. And if the chronic absence are high, it really affects the whole school. So this impact is widespread. As we think about that, think about how chronic absence affects schools where you work or the districts where you serve. If we were to break down and think about where a chronic absence is present across our regions and demographics, our next slide looks at chronic absence affecting every locale. It's found in 1/3 of our cities, in 1/3 of our suburbs, and in the remaining third is in towns and rural areas. And when we examine the ethnicity of those almost 15 million students who are absent nationwide, you notice that every ethnic group is affected. And so, again, this is a crisis that we want to address, and this is a focus that we want to keep. And then if we go to the next slide, just like Kari said, for Connecticut, thinking of your local data, you see this trend, and it's really a good trajectory to decrease the chronic absence. And so proud that in the last year, Connecticut as a state has reached 17.2. While the challenge is still there, right? Because chronic absence is a problem, and it's a worry for many of us. We know that we celebrate progress, and we stay energized and really motivated to address any root causes and how we can best address attendance across the state. So as you look at these data, both the national data and the definitions of chronic absence, and what your reflections are about your place of work and your schools and communities. On the next slide, we have two questions for sharing out. What surprises you about these recent data, both the national and local data? And then what might be the implications for your districts? If you would be kind enough to write that in the chat, we would greatly appreciate it. Just some of your reflections. What are some of your thoughts? Anything that stands out about Connecticut data, because you must be familiar with your own school and districts. Yes, Ruth, thank you. While there's improvement, the work continues. Absolutely. Yes, 1 in 4 absences nationally. Yes, that is a lot. Thanks, Caroline. A former 5th grade teacher. You're curious to dig in why 5th grade saw a dip in chronic absence. Yes. Yep. And the more we unpack the data, right, the more we get to that actionable data to make decisions and to identify the 5th graders and maybe the kindergarten and the high schoolers, and wherever we see the patterns and trends. All right, districts with strong attendance teams seem to have better improvements. Yes, Kari, thank you. Wonderful. Thanks for the reflections. Really appreciate it. For the next couple of conversations, and I see Juan, comment, attendance on ICE activities will be impacting even more. Yes, yes, we've seen those happen in many states. Let me invite you to take a look now at the pathway for change. As we think about how we best address chronic absence in our communities, in our districts, across the state, we take this perspective that's a part of the pathway for change. Next slide. So, addressing absences requires shifting mindsets, policies, and practices. And there's a sequence to this work. We want to avoid jumping straight to decisions about strategies and really be thoughtful around how we get to these desired outcomes. So we must first shift individual and district-wide mindsets from legalistic approaches or punitive beliefs to problem solving that are positive in nature. Seeing students and families as important part of our design and how we bring about solutions instead of the problem is really key, right? And believing that when everybody plays their part, chronic absence is a solvable problem. Then we think about actionable data. This actionable data tells us which students need the most support, are in need of our support. We need the capacity, which is the professional training and the space and the time to provide that support. Then we select strategies that are appropriate and really personalized for the students who need that support from us. And that will get us to our desired outcomes. And so once we will have the will to do the work, we can lay out these strategies and really, really build on what are the roles and responsibilities and who's participating in this all hands on deck approach, building our capacity to really think about achieving better outcomes. Next slide. So as we think about a mindset shift and how we get to positive problem solving approaches, we think about moving to partnership focused. So let's go deeper into what it means to shift to a really partnership focused approach. Sometimes when schools have worked with students and families who are chronically absent and they feel they've done everything in their power to provide support and interventions and they haven't seen any change, instead of trying something else and going back to the drawing board, what we see is a shift in tone, sometimes a more dismissive attitude towards families for not bringing their children to school. And so we want to be able to think about how do we shift to a more partnership focused? How does that help? So sometimes we blame the families for poor attendance, and unfortunately, we'll alienate families with that approach. And so instead of approaching families to only address the problem, we do an initial outreach that focuses on building relationships, right? We think about taking a year-round approach to attendance, which means that, yes, while school is not in session in the summer, we can still do some kind of connection with families, such as a postcard, right? To say, we can't wait to see you back in school, or we miss your smiles. And so think about how that initial outreach, especially for the beginning of the school year, could build on the relationships and the trust that you've already established with the families in your communities. We also want to move from one-way messaging to families that might come into an automated call, or what we sometimes call robocalls, to start listening, start with listening to families, really digging into finding their hopes and dreams and what are the assets, what are the needs, and really honoring the family for the expertise that they bring to our communities. Focusing only on barriers is not going to get us to solutions, but leveraging student family strengths to overcome those challenges is really going to be part of how we design the solutions to address the barriers that we find in our communities. And then another example of that problem solving is like when we presume that we have all the answers and know what's best for our families, That's not, again, not going to be landing us in a good spot, right? But we instead should collaborate with families and encourage those practices that build, again, on their expertise, honoring who they are as families in our communities. All right. I hope this makes sense. So let's go to the next slide. And as you think about your schools and districts and about this mindset shift that you probably have seen or you know is much needed, what needs to shift from problem solving to partnership focused approach? And then as you think about that, what would it take to make that shift? If you could share in the chat some of your thoughts, we would really appreciate seeing your answers. I wonder what you're thinking right now about those mindset shifts, because again, they are part of that pathway to change, and they're so critical in terms of how we see the work, how we value the work, the beliefs that we hold individually and together, and how we make decisions. Thanks, Michelle. Shifting away from robocalls, yep. Or at least making it two-way communication and ensuring that there is two-way communication, right? Brianna, thank you. I think about the extra staff hours needed for personal conversations with all of our families. Yes, that's investing in relationships. Yes, we need to treat families with the same care that we treat our students, and relationships are important above all. Yes, thanks, Ruth. The belief that families have strengths and can provide us with valuable information. Yes, honoring those families. Juan, thank you for your comment. And Jess, you said that we're creating bridges between families and school, not reaching out to criticize and blame, create safety. Absolutely. Absolutely. That sense of safety and the belonging and support are so critical. 7th through 12th grade schools, doing home visits in the summer. Absolutely. That's great, especially with middle schoolers. And high school students are at risk. Yes. Yes, we work with families, not for families. Absolutely. Yes. Relationships first. Building trust with families. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your responses. All right. I want to keep us going to make sure that we cover all these key concepts that we wanted to share today. And if you have comments, please keep them coming. We love your interaction. All right, let's look at the key to improving attendance as a tiered approach. All right, next slide. So I would guess that by now you'd be very familiar with the pyramid of the multi-tiered system of support for attendance. If you are not, you would notice that the tiers sit on what we call foundational supports, right? So tier 1 is that universal prevention. The tier 1 is for all students, not just for the students who have good and great attendance. So all students and families are included in that first tier. Second tier is where we think about that early intervention, catching those absences early and not letting them fall into tier 3. And if they do, tier 3 is the most intensive intervention for students who miss 20% or more of enrolled days. As we think about the foundational supports that promote positive conditions for learning, we wanted to introduce you to some of the concepts that really support those foundational supports on the next slide. And these are some of those structures. Next slide. Those structures that we believe exist in your schools. So think about a healthy learning environment, think about welcome and safe climate, think about activities that build community. In many of our schools, access to food and health services and basic needs is really critical. That active family and student engagement is really important, and positive relationships, and so many more. This is just a sample of some of the foundational supports that um, make up our schools. So as you think about some of these foundational supports, what have you seen in your schools? What are the existing foundationals that are currently implemented in your schools? Let's go to the next slide. And again, please tell us in the chat. And if there's anything missing, think about that as a reflection. But if you have some of the other existing foundational supports, in addition to what we showed, please share in the chat. We would love to see what you think of foundational supports and what you have in place. Meetings in the beginning of the year, get ahead of any issues. Absolutely. That's really a good system to have in place, especially for driving calendars and really setting cadence of meetings. And I'm sure that you have many more foundational supports. While you think about that and reflect, and again, encouraging you to share in the chat, let us think about what are some of the examples of the tiered supports, so that we have just some ideas of what has been research-based and best practice, and you can take and implement as you continue your work in the schools. So let's go to the next slide. And this is a tier 1 sample of the interventions that we could, again, use for all students. So we always think about starting with clear, concise, and consistent communication about schedules, about expectations, about connecting attendance to the value that it holds, connected to academics, behavior, social, emotional, really that executive functioning set of skills. The routines and celebrations, recognizing good and improved attendance. And yes, many times we use incentives, and we think about, at least I think about my work with one of the schools in Detroit, and as they recognized children who've had good and improved attendance, they also recognized the parents. And when they did that, the engagement with those parents was so much richer than before, because it's many times we count on the parents, and especially elementary schools, right, and middle, we count on the parents to bring their children to school. And so recognizing good and improved attendance for students and their parents could be a really good way to think about a universal support. And a connection to a caring adult in the school is so critical for how we move the work forward, right? If we know that a child has a go-to person, it could be their teacher, it could be the secretary or an admin, or the principal, or lunch staff, right? They are so much more likely to do well and feel very comfortable and safe at school and engaged in learning and in social behavior. So these are some of our tier 1 supports. In the next slide, I wanted to invite you to explore or know about the attendance playbook. And we can drop a link in the chat where you can find it, and or if you want to take just a minute, I want to be mindful of our time. If we go to the next slide, you have the link in there, and you also have the QR code where you can explore the attendance playbook. And I would say, let's give you about 2 minutes to just try it out, open the link, see what you can find. And one of the things that I really like to go to the attendance playbook for is to find research and bright spots in other places in the country where these particular strategies and interventions have been applied. And so you'll see that as you explore the attendance playbook, you would read a strategy where it was done as a bright spot and some research that's attached to it. So please feel free to share this attendance playbook with your friends, with your colleagues, and especially with the teachers, because this is such a great way to support and guide the work, and put ideas in place if those are needed. So please feel free to explore this playbook as you wish. And again, for the sake of time, I wanted to keep us going. Thank you so much, Jaren, for dropping the link to the playbook. And yes, Kari, it is a fantastic resource. We've shared this almost, gosh, I would say in every presentation, because it's really a go-to resource for everyone. So thank you so much, everyone, for checking it out. All right, let's explore in the next slide. Let's look at tier 2 strategies. This is where we actually start to think about what is needed and how do we, once we notice the needs and the barriers to attendance, how do we intervene? What do we do? And here is a sample of some of the strategies that we could take and apply. Of course, family visits, and I know that LEAP has an amazing, is an amazing program. We've been sharing so many bright spots about how Connecticut has done home visits and how effective they have been. And so really proud of your efforts and your success. Another proven strategy here is mentorship. And so in any form that you do it, mentors are so valuable to how we create that sense of connection and meet the needs that are expressed by students in our communities, in our schools, through mentorship. Tutoring as needed based on, again, needs of schools, academic needs of students. Check in and check out, expanded learning opportunities for fun or added fun, and many, many more. So as you think about tier 2 strategies, if we go to the next slide, what are some of those tier 2 actual interventions that you've done successfully? Tell us, what have you seen done successfully? What have you done? And from what we've shared, what would you replicate at your sites? And if you could put that in the chat, we would love to see it. All right. Does anybody want to share? Check in and check out. Thank you, Lauren. Yes. Yes, those are proven interventions that I'm sure you've seen successful. Anybody else? What's resonating with you? What would you replicate?
Anybody want to just raise their hand and share, or just turn on their mic and share if you don't want to type?
Emily said home visits, check in, check out, student success plans. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing. Those student success plans are so helpful. I've used them and I've shared them with so many districts.
I just want to say right here, Emma, if I can, that it's important right now, and you should know who were the students who were chronically absent last year, what grade are they in this year, and what tier 2 interventions might you have planned for them as they come back to school this year. Did they have a home visit over the summer? There you are, Juan. You were reading my mind. Exactly. So what tier 2 plans, because you know it's predictable. The new research is telling us that chronic absence is predictable, and that you should be able to look even in EdSite Secure or in your local data and identify those students who need more support right from the get-go. Don't let them get off track.
Absolutely. And thanks for all the comments in the chat. Really appreciate your thoughtfulness and the work that you've done, right? Following up with families shows long-term investments with keeping families engaged with school. Absolutely, Erin. Thank you so much. I've seen the other comments. Thanks, Kari. All right, let's look at some of the tier 3 interventions. So these are the most intensive, expensive, resource rich, right, interventions for students who are in tier 3. And so many times we know that this requires partnerships because schools cannot do it alone. And in many cases, district support. So some of these are interagency case management or housing stability supports, or community-based court or individualized learning and success plan leading to graduation, with that legal intervention as the last resort. And so as we think about tier 3, and certainly this is the reality in many of our schools. Next slide. What tier 3 strategies have you used at your sites and how effective have they been? Again, if you can put in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, we would appreciate hearing from you as well. And if this is a part of a reflection, that's all right as well. Again, we know that tier 3 is intensive interventions. Yes, thank you, community-based. Yes, Kari, thank you for reminding us about the child find. Yep, interagency case management. And with attendance coordinators. Thank you so much, Adriana. All right. So we've looked at some of the tiered approach and some of our interventions. Let's take a quick look at the next slide. And this is, one more. And this is about all the root cause of chronic absence. And so as we think about how we identify the root cause of chronic absence, we at Attendance Works, we put them in these 4 buckets, and we look at barriers, aversions, disengagement, and misconceptions. I would encourage you to think about what are some of these root causes that could be in your circle of control, and what are some of those in your circle of influence, right? As we think about barriers, we know that these are many times systemic, right? Systemic challenges, right? Because as you think about trauma and poor transportation, or housing and food insecurity, or system involvement, lack of predictable schedules for learning, or community violence, this can affect students in so many ways. And so many times these happen, right? Or typically these happen, take place outside of our school. When we think about aversions, they are within the control of our schools, and disengagement. So as you think about some of the examples that are listed in your slide, unwelcoming school climates can deter students from wanting to be at school. The peer challenges, or the anxiety, right? The rise in anxiety, and or the undiagnosed disabilities, caregiver having negative experiences in education, all these and many more barriers to attendance could be the aversions that keep students away from school. Another bucket for these root causes is disengagement. And so as we think about, again, what's in our control and what's in our circle of influence, think about what we can do to meet students who might say that they're bored, who might say they don't have meaningful relationships with adults in the school. And again, we just looked at those tiered supports or tier interventions. And one of those was really that connection to a caring adult. Some of the other ones are misconceptions. So in there is where we can do our best to communicate and inform the parents, the students, the community about the value of attendance to academics and all the areas that are priorities for us. So misconceptions include absences that are only a problem if they're unexcused. That's not true. Missing 2 days a month doesn't affect learning. That's also not true. Or assuming that students must stay home for any symptom of illness, that's also not true, right? So knowing um, uh, the whole information around these reasons is really important. And so as we think about how you can take um, the information that you've collected from the students and families, and how you can use that with that actionable data to support a team that will collectively suggest and select strategies. We wanted to give you an opportunity on the next two slides. Actually, it's a tool that will be a worksheet where you can identify these root causes of absence with questions that are quite simple and attached to the root causes for chronic absence that we just showed. So if you can go 2 slides over, yes, this document could be a very good tool for you to use and use for the rest of the year. And as you meet students and find out about chronic absence, I would say this should be also a go-to tool for analyzing root cause. And then just before we end today, because I know we're just about at time, we wanted to encourage you in the next slide to think about aligning partners and interventions to the reasons for absences. So we're working backwards, right? We're thinking about what are those reasons for absences? What have you seen? What have you identified in the particular student groups, the classes, however you look at the data and analyze it and identify those needs for particular students? And that it might be anxiety. And so then what would you decide on a possible solution? And then again, if we need to partner with someone, think about who could be that adequate partner to support those particular needs. So you have the example with anxiety. A possible intervention could be enlist a trusted messenger to talk with families about health and safety, right? Informing the family is so critical before we actually take action. Meeting with the school counselor, social worker, psychologist, the nurse, right? We know that every school in Connecticut has a nurse. So really tapping into their expertise and connections is so important. And so your nurse could be your partner in this work, right? Your nurse could be on the attendance team or the team that addresses attendance. And then again, local partners, pediatricians, clinics that could be a partner, school-based centers for those schools who have them. And then you'll see other examples in that slide. And so we hope that this learning so far in this part one has been relevant to you and has been helpful to think about how you can effectively be even more ready to get the new school year started and to support not only the students and the families, but your teams to refine the processes that you have in place and to really kick off the school year with great tools and resources and knowledge to do your work in the best way possible. So I wanted to leave the last 2 minutes to Caroline. So I'm giving this back to you, knowing that there's part 2 in about 2 weeks on Night Talk Tuesday. Caroline?
Thank you, Emma. And I think just 1 week next
Okay. Yes.
Tuesday we have part 2, and I think everything you shared was so relevant, Emma. And I appreciate, even though it's back to basics, we're all always up for a refresher, and thinking through this and hearing everybody's comments in the chat, I think is so useful to hear those district perspectives. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise this morning. Jaren, if you want to scoot all the way to the last slide, we have just a reminder for you all that next Tuesday we'll be back here with part 2 with Emma. And also, in case you don't already know this, all of the Talk Tuesdays from the last 4 years are archived on the state website. So there is a wealth of expertise in those presentations and slide decks. So we encourage you to dig in and explore in there as well. So that wraps up our first Talk Tuesday of the year. We appreciate all of the help from our team here at Ed Advance, and we appreciate our partners at CSDE. And thank you so much, Emma. And thank you to all of you participants for being here. We look forward to seeing you next time, and good luck with the opening of schools. I know everybody is scrambling this time of year to get everything done. So thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.